It was a shocking moment the world did not expect, and the cameras captured every second. At the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tanjin, two powerful leaders faced each other across the table. India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, the man seen as India's pride, sat directly across from Russia's Vladimir Putin. The meeting began in the usual way, full of warm words and gestures of time-tested friendship between India and Russia. There were remarks about long-standing ties, shared history, and the way both nations have stood together through good and bad times. But then something unprecedented happened, something that immediately set this meeting apart from countless others. Prime Minister Modi made a direct demand to Vladimir Putin, urging him to bring an end to the war in Ukraine. This was not whispered behind closed doors. It was said openly, in front of the cameras, with the world watching. Why does this matter? Because India has walked an extremely fine line throughout the Ukraine war. New Delhi has carefully avoided openly condemning Moscow, while also refusing to join Western sanctions against Russia. Instead, India has chosen a delicate balancing act, buying discounted Russian oil while also publicly calling for peace. For months, this balance kept India shielded from criticism, allowing it to gain economically while avoiding diplomatic isolation. But now, in Tanjin, Modi went one step further, stepping out of the shadows with a rare public demand. He praised recent peace efforts and reminded the world that endless fighting cannot be the only answer. For Vladimir Putin, this was a delicate and uncomfortable moment to navigate, with cameras capturing his every reaction. Russia depends heavily on India, not just as a key buyer of oil, but also as a defense and trade partner. Technology cooperation, energy security, and long-term strategic deals tie Moscow and New Delhi together in critical ways. So when Modi spoke, the words carried real weight, even though they were delivered in the most polite manner. Putin listened carefully, nodding, choosing his response with extreme caution, avoiding confrontation, but also avoiding concrete promises. That's exactly why this moment stood out at the SCO summit and why it is being talked about worldwide. Most leaders at the summit were busy criticizing the West, speaking about multipolarity and challenging Western dominance. But India's message was different, projecting itself not as an attacker, but as a calm and reasonable mediator. Modi's statement gently reminded Putin that war brings economic pain, not just to Russia or Ukraine, but globally. Energy prices, food shortages, and inflation are all consequences of this conflict, and India has every reason to seek stability. The shocking part was not the content of Modi's words, but the fact that he said them openly. India has always framed itself as Russia's trusted friend. But this was a friend speaking a difficult truth. It was a subtle move, yet a game-changing signal of India's growing confidence on the global stage. The rare demand could be remembered as the most important moment of this year's Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. India showed the world that it is not afraid to speak uncomfortable truths, even to its closest partners. At the same time, India managed to maintain its balancing role, neither alienating Russia nor aligning fully with the West. This is classic Indian diplomacy, but upgraded with new confidence and visibility before a global audience. For many, it showed how India is positioning itself as a rising power and a credible voice of reason. Think about the stakes. Russia needs India for oil sales, defense contracts, and technological cooperation to withstand sanctions. India needs Russia for energy security, military supplies, and leverage in its strategic rivalry with China. Yet India also needs credibility with the United States, Europe, and the global South. So Modi's demand was not just about Ukraine, it was about signaling India's new diplomatic power. By calling for peace so openly, India carved out space as a potential mediator trusted by all sides. The war in Ukraine has dragged on for years, destabilizing economies, supply chains, and global politics. So when Modi looked Putin in the eye and asked for peace, it was more than symbolic. It was a warning that endless war cannot continue without consequences for Russia's global friendships. The fact that Putin nodded quietly instead of dismissing the words shows he recognized the sensitivity of the moment. No promises were made, but no confrontation erupted either, leaving the world to analyze every gesture and phrase. That's exactly why this moment is being described as shocking and unprecedented in recent India-Russia relations. It was a public demonstration that India has the confidence to act as a global problem solver. And this matters because energy prices, food security, and global inflation are all directly shaped by this war. India's people, just like citizens everywhere, are affected by higher costs and instability caused by prolonged conflict. So Modi's words were not only diplomatic, but also deeply connected to domestic political and economic realities. Now, all eyes are on what comes next. Will Russia quietly adjust its strategy under subtle pressure from friends? Or will Putin continue to dig in, leaving India to keep balancing between economic gains and diplomatic costs? The next few months could reveal whether India becomes a more active mediator in global crises, or whether this rare demand remains a symbolic moment rather than a turning point in international diplomacy. For now, what we saw in Tanjin was India signaling it is ready for a larger global role. It was not a dramatic clash, but it was a carefully measured act of statesmanship with huge implications. This could reshape how the world sees India's foreign policy, from cautious balancing to bold global leadership. It also sets India apart at a summit dominated by anti-Western rhetoric, showing it can speak to everyone. That is India's true diplomatic strength, the ability to maintain relations across Washington, Moscow, and Beijing simultaneously. India is telling the world we are Russia's friend, but also a voice of reason that can demand peace. That combination of friendship and honesty could define India's role in the coming years of global instability. This was not just another summit speech, it was a strategic signal that echoed far beyond the hall. And in international politics, subtle signals like these often matter more than fiery statements or empty declarations. So remember this. At the SCO summit in Tanjin, India reminded Russia and the world that war has limits. It was shocking not because of loud drama, but because of the quiet courage it displayed on camera. The war in Ukraine continues, but India has now positioned itself as one of the few who can talk to everyone. And in a multipolar world, that ability is priceless. If you found this analysis useful and want more exclusive updates on breaking global politics, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more authoritative insights, and comment below with your thoughts on India's rare demand. Stay tuned because this story is far from over, and the next move could reshape the future.